and the judges can introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the We the People national competition. We're going to introduce ourselves and then ask you to introduce yourselves and your teacher, and then we'll go from there. My name is Dan Taubman, and I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado.
My name is Ali Khan. I am an attorney in Chicago, as well as an alum of the program, representing Illinois at the national competition in 1998. Congrats on being here.
And my name is Ben Glickman. I'm an attorney with the California Attorney General's Office, also an alum of the program. I represented California at the national finals way back in 1995. And I just realized my background could be a cheat sheet. Don't read any of that. Right.
Would you please introduce yourselves and your teacher?
I'm Pratham.
I'm Abby.
And I'm Seth.
And our teacher, Mr. Riffy, is over here.
Oh, welcome. So as I'm sure you have figured out, we're going to ask you today question 2, which I will now read, and then we'll hear your opening statement and then have a chance to ask you some questions and then conclude with some feedback. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into 2 great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of unified or divided government? You may begin.
We believe that the main issues that led to the formation of the original political parties were primary debates over the power of the state and national government, foreign policy conflicts, and difference in economic priorities. After the ratification of the Constitution in the convention, 2 major ideologies crashed: the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. One of the main contingencies of the Federalist Party was that they argued for a more centralized government since they were fearful of the Confederacy government within the Articles of Confederation created. On the other hand, the Federalist opposing party, which was the Democratic Republicans, comprised of diverse elements that emphasized local and humanitarian concern, states' rights, and democratic procedures. The Democratic Republicans believed in protecting the interests of the working classes. They believed that an agrarian economy would best serve these citizens. They saw that the establishment of a national bank of the United States would use as a means of usurping power that belonged to the individual states, and they also believed that it would be tied too closely to the rich.
To start, the Federalist Party came into being between 1789 and 1790 as a national coalition of bankers and businessmen in support of—
Excuse me, could I ask you to speak a little bit louder, please?
Sorry, my bad. To start, the Federalist Party came into being between 1789 and 1790 as a national coalition of bankers and businessmen in support of Hamilton's fiscal policies. These supporters worked in every state to build an organized party committed to a fiscally sound and nationalistic government. Early on, the Federalists established their views on foreign policy, the economy, and the national government powers by calling for a national bank, tariffs, and good relations with Great Britain. Hamilton developed the concept of implied powers and successfully argued that the adoption of interpretation of the Constitution. As the opposition towards Hamilton's policies increased and the Anti-Federalist Party died out, the Democratic Republican Party took formation. Because of fundamental disagreements between the 2 parties over key issues, those issues that first separated the parties continue to persist today. Over time, new political parties have emerged and taken over the Democratic Republican Party and the Federalist Party. And today we have 2 major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. Each party shares similarities with the past parties. For example, the Democratic Party supports Biden's new economic plan, which focuses on infrastructure development, which would accelerate the fight against climate change by hastening the shift to a new cleaner energy sources and would help promote racial equality in the economy. This is similar to the Federalist economic plan, as the Democrats are currently attempting to centralize the economy through large national plans. Another issue that continues to separate the political parties was personal freedoms. The Anti-Federalists insisted on placing a Bill of Rights which defined individual liberties in Articles 3 through 12 in the Constitution. Since the Democratic Republicans were fearful of a large overbearing government, they encouraged the use of Bill of Rights.
Today, many members of the Republican Party dispute the efficacy and constitutionality of a statewide mask mandate. This example shows that there are still many fearful of centralized power. The United States having a progressive and conservative party comes with benefits, but the divided government also creates many disadvantages. One main benefit is that the system provides room for debate and compromise to better represent the interests of Americans. Because of the nature of the system, it establishes loyal opposition, which provides established legal opposition to the majority. An important example of loyal opposition is the FDR era, where the New Deal being passed by many Republicans, and many Republicans opposed certain pieces of legislation. Through the compromise, both Democrats and Republicans agreed on legislation such as the Workers' Progress Administration and the amount of spending. The idea is that a minority opinion inherently has power in our democracy and is important so that our society does not forego effective social change. On the other hand, a two-party system has many disadvantages as well. First, the system has recently become more popularized and radicalized. As a result, groups such as the Proud Boys and alt-right, which oppose racial, gender, and religious equality, have become popularized. Another disadvantage is that it causes gridlock in Congress. Gridlock delays political action since neither political party can come to agreement and often can be disastrous. An example of this is the coronavirus relief bill, where disagreements on the amount and distribution of funding hurt the economy.
Okay, I see your time is up. Thank you for your opening statement. I'd like to start by asking you about within the political parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, to what extent are there or have there been differences of opinion within each party?
So we can see this in the 1960s, like during the civil rights era. Within both of the parties, especially the Democrats, there were many disagreements between whether or not we should or shouldn't have segregation. We can see that this actually ended up causing more of a split. And yeah, so that's an example. That's a historical example of that.
But in more recent times, we've seen with past President Donald Trump that there was a lot of people within his own party that didn't necessarily believe in some of the pieces of legislation or even actions that he was taking towards climate change, for example, or just dealing with immigration as a whole. So we saw that a lot of people within the Republican Party specifically de-aligned from President Donald Trump's views, but still stayed in line with the Republican Party on other factors.
And then overall, we'd argue that the differences in opinion between Democrats and Republicans now and decades ago is like very vast. We see that Democrats usually propose entitlement programs which give funding to low income people, whereas Republicans don't usually agree with the efficacy of these programs. So overall, we'd say there is like a massive difference in opinion between the two parties, and that has led to a lot of controversies over time.
I would somewhat disagree with Seth's statement here, because I would say that overall, we see that on a global scale, the United States is still extremely conservative in nature, right? And Democrats and Republicans generally believe the same ideologies, such as the economy and believing more of a capitalist type society than more of a communist type society. And we see that doesn't necessarily reflect on a global scale that there would be many differences between each of the parties.
I would like to respectfully disagree with my partner Pratham. Even though from a worldview, the ideologies are fairly similar, failing to understand the differences between the ideologies in the context of the US is a massive misunderstanding, because then you wouldn't understand the key issues that separate the United States. For example, we have we have Biden's new infrastructure plan. And even though the Republicans are supporting a different infrastructure plan that doesn't favor green energy, failing to recognize the differences between the plans is a fatal catastrophe.
So you mentioned third parties, and one of the problems caused by the current two-party system is it limits the ability for third parties to succeed. Do you agree that that's a problem? And what changes might you propose to give third parties a better shot?
Well, I would say it definitely is a problem, because we see the Green Party and Libertarian Party don't have much of a voice. Even though they've started getting more and more of the vote, they've still been and more and more attention, they've still been getting less overall percentages of the vote. And we can see this in the difference between the 2016 and 2020 election. A really good change would be a ranked choice voting system, because we've seen that it works. More importantly, we can see that in the 2020 election, many people didn't necessarily on the left like Biden, but they had to vote for Biden because they hated Trump more. Having a ranked choice voting system would be super beneficial, because it would allow for people to vote first for who they wanted, then second for Biden, and third for Trump, just say for instance.
I would like to respectfully disagree with my colleague. Seeing how, for example, Canada has ranked choice voting, there is still a limited number of people from third parties who are able to get seats in parliament within Canada. However, I would argue that a first step would be abolishing the Electoral College system. Seeing how the Electoral College system gives, except for states such as Nebraska and Maine, a winner-takes-all type of system. If we change the Electoral College as a whole and move to a popular vote, that would increase incentive for presidential runners to campaign to more states, first of all, but secondly, ensure that we would have more voices heard regardless of being in a majority state or not.
I would like to argue with my colleague Abby. I think that as a two-party system, it does limit third parties, but because we live in a democracy, the voice of the people still generally goes with either Democrat or Republican. If we had more parties, it would give the third parties more of an unequal grounding in the U.S. political system, because they don't have the support as large of support as the two major political parties. And secondly, we'd say that even the two major political parties do reflect a lot of the sentiments that say the Green Party and the Libertarian Party hold. And for that reason, I would say that the two-party system does work right now.
Let me ask you this, and it seems that Abby may have predicted my question, because I was going to ask about the Electoral College. Since you came out in favor of abolishing it, what would you say to people who would argue that the Electoral College is necessary, because without it, it is harmful or weakens the political power rights of the smaller states?
Right. So I would say, first of all, in response, that because of the Electoral College system that we have in place, what the main purpose of the candidates traveling around the United States is to simply go to battleground states. So for example, we look at California, which has been largely Democratic and will continue to be Democratic within the future. Not a lot of presidential candidates aren't going to go to California to necessarily campaign. Rather, they're going to go to states like Georgia or Texas to campaign, because they know they have a bigger impact there. But secondly, with the smaller states, I would say that one of the biggest issues that the Electoral College has is the winner-take-all system that I kind of mentioned about. So for example, in our home state of Nebraska, we don't have that necessarily. So we have 3 different districts where one is able to turn blue, and that was like a highly battleground key area that a lot of people from both parties decided to go to Omaha and within that area to campaign, because it was a kind of a last-minute scenario. If one state would have won that, then it would have changed the entire election. But if we weren't to abolish the Electoral College as a whole, I would say the second best option is to remove the winner-take-all system.
And to add to that, in terms of state representation, presidents, especially with Biden's new plan, or with the new Biden presidency, he's trying to win the support of everyone in the United States. So even if in past presidencies, smaller states weren't represented, usually the trend right now is that presidents want to help every state and serve their interests as well.
When you talked about the advantages and disadvantages of unified or divided government, I wonder if you could expand on that and talk about when there's been divided government. Are there examples where the different parties have combined together to reach compromises?
Yeah, so we can see this a lot. For example, we've seen this even during the Trump presidency. For the first coronavirus relief bill, there was some debate, but still the most important thing for all politicians was to get money in the hands of people and to not allow the people to suffer. And we can see that in the first coronavirus relief bill, there was some debate, but overall, most politicians agreed that the most important goal was to give stimulus money to the people to not hurt the economy. And overall, the first stimulus bill did effectively work.
And time. Thank you so much. And let's give a round of applause to the students for their hard work. All right, now the judges have some feedback for you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I can see that you're all well versed in this on this question, and that you are not hesitant at all to disagree with one another, which shows that you have thought about the issues and are knowledgeable enough so that you can explain your different positions based upon specific examples. And so I think that's really good. I want to commend you for the beginning part of your opening statement. I think you had a really good description of the different reasons for the development of the Federalist and the Democratic Republican parties. I thought that was very well done. And I thought I like that you mentioned that Alexander Hamilton espoused the view of the implied powers in the Constitution to support his view that the Constitution should be interpreted broadly. I thought that was very good. When you talked about the divided, when you say that the issue of segregation divided the Democrats in the 1960s, there are some other examples that was a good example, but you might have also mentioned things like the Tea Party among the Republicans and the Blue Dog Democrats, which are other examples where there have been different views within the Republican and Democratic parties. And you said that when you're asked about ranked choice voting, you said it works, but I would have liked to have heard where it works and what your support for that statement was. And finally, I think your example of compromise of the first coronavirus bill was a good one. Another example that people often mention is the 1965 Voting Rights Act, where Democrats and Republicans worked together to pass that important legislation. So overall, I think you did a really nice job, and you showed that you really understand all of the different aspects of the question.
Oh, okay, I'll go. Yes, I agree with all of that. I thought you guys did a very nice job with the history portion of the prepared presentation. I thought that was the strongest piece, kind of the main question and the first sub question. I thought you guys walked us through that very effectively. But I enjoyed our conversation in the question and answer period even more. I thought you guys were very responsive and eager to respond, and had good answers and support for your answers. I thought in particular, my question about the third parties, I like to see, you had a discussion kind of amongst yourselves. Yes, it is a problem. Ranked choice voting might solve it. No, actually ranked choice voting is used in Canada and doesn't work all that well. I agree with my colleague that it might have been even better if you'd provided some examples of where it does work, or actually backing up a step, just describing how it works, right? What is different about ranked choice voting? How does it work mechanically? Don't always assume that we know as much as you do. So it's okay to kind of define your terms, but that's a nit. I thought the other really enjoyable part of the conversation was talking about the Electoral College, and you were ready to not only discuss abolishing it and the impact of that, but an alternative to abolishing it, just making it district-based rather than state-based, which was interesting. The one quibble I would have is I'm not sure candidates don't visit California. They just only visit it to raise money.
First, again, congrats on being here. I know it's a lot of hard work. I think my colleagues have pretty much covered it all. I too enjoyed the history aspect of your presentation, some of the modern examples. I was thrilled that you beat me to the Electoral College question. Also, you knew I was going to ask that. That was good, and I'm glad you had thought it through with an alternative. And then I really enjoyed the conversation. I liked how you disagreed. Everyone participated. Everyone was enthusiastic. It was really enjoyable to listen to and talk with you all. So, really nice job.
Well, congratulations again. Thanks for your presentation today. We really enjoyed hearing you.
Thank you.